I'm not someone who does urban exploration for the thrill of it. I'm a photographer. I shoot architecture, mostly commercial work, office buildings, renovation projects, that kind of thing. But on weekends, I do personal work. Abandoned spaces, factories, hospitals, old schools, places that have a history you can feel in the walls if you stand still long enough. I've been inside maybe 40 or 50 abandoned buildings over the past 6 years. I've never had an experience I couldn't explain. Until Harlow Street. The building had been a small psychiatric facility, operated from the 1940s through the late 1980s, then closed when the county moved to outpatient care. It had been sitting empty for 35 years by the time I found it. I read about it on a local history forum. Someone had posted old photos. The exterior, the intake room, a long corridor with numbered doors on both sides. The architecture was remarkable. Brick, Art Deco detailing, tall windows that would catch morning light perfectly. I spent 2 weeks researching it before I went. Found the address, confirmed the property was still owned by the county, noted that there was no active security contract on record, checked the fence line on satellite view, found a gap on the east side that looked accessible. I went on a Saturday in November, arrived at 6 a.m. before full light, parked 2 blocks away, walked in through the gap in the fence. The building was in better condition than I expected. The roof was mostly intact. The floors were solid. I tested each one before putting my weight on it, the way you learn to do. Most of the windows were broken, but the frames were still standing. The corridor from the photographs was exactly as it had looked online. Long, straight, numbered doors on both sides. Pale green paint peeling in long strips from the walls. I spent about 2 hours on the ground floor, shot maybe 300 frames. The light was extraordinary, that flat, gray November light that makes everything look like a memory. I was completely alone. I'd checked thoroughly. No signs of recent occupation, no fresh graffiti, no sleeping bags, no food wrappers, just 35 years of dust and silence. I was satisfied. I was going to leave. Then I noticed the door at the end of the corridor. It was different from the others. The numbered doors were standard institutional. Wood, small wire glass windows, painted over so many times the hinges had nearly disappeared into the frame. This door was metal. Gray, unpainted, with a sliding bolt lock on the outside. A basement door. It was open, not wide open, ajar, maybe 6 inches, enough to see stairs going down. I stood there for a moment. I went down. The basement was a single large room. Concrete floor, low ceiling, exposed pipes running the length of it. Emergency lighting, the kind with battery backup. Still working after all those years, casting everything in a dim yellow-green. There were filing cabinets along one wall, metal chairs stacked in a corner, an examination table still bolted to the floor, with leather restraint straps that had cracked and dried but were still attached to the frame. I started shooting. I was maybe 20 minutes into the basement when I heard it. Footsteps. Above me, on the ground floor. I stopped moving, stood completely still and listened. They were slow, deliberate, moving down the corridor toward the basement door. I told myself it was another photographer, a security guard, someone who had every right to be there and would simply tell me to leave. The footsteps stopped directly above me, at the top of the basement stairs. Silence. Then the metal door above me, the door I had left ajar, swung shut. I heard the bolt slide across. I want to be precise about what happened in the next few seconds because I've replayed it many times. I did not panic. I'm not saying that to sound impressive. I'm saying it because panic would have been the wrong response, and some part of me understood that immediately. I stood in the basement of an abandoned psychiatric facility, locked in the near dark, and I thought very carefully about what I knew. The bolt was on the outside. Someone had just slid it across. That meant someone was on the other side of the door right now, standing at the top of the stairs, and they had locked me in deliberately. I had my phone. I had signal. Barely. 1 bar. I had a flashlight. I had no way out except that door. I called 911. I kept my voice low and steady, gave the address, explained the situation. The dispatcher told me to stay where I was and stay on the line. I stayed on the line for 11 minutes. I did not hear anything from above me during those 11 minutes. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. When the police arrived, 2 officers. They found the bolt drawn on the outside of the basement door. They found me in the basement. They searched the entire building. They found no one. The officers were professional and thorough. They checked every room, every closet, the roof access. They found no signs of recent occupation, no evidence of another person having been in the building that morning. One of them asked me if I was certain I hadn't accidentally pushed the door shut myself when I went down the stairs. I told him the bolt was on the outside. He wrote that down and didn't say anything else. I've thought about this for 2 years. The rational explanations don't hold. The door was metal and heavy. It didn't swing shut on its own. The bolt required a deliberate sliding motion. I was in the basement, alone, for 20 minutes before the footsteps started. Whoever was up there had waited. What I keep coming back to is the waiting. They knew I was down there. They waited 20 minutes before they moved. They walked slowly, deliberately, down the corridor, slowly enough that I had time to hear them coming. Then they shut the door and threw the bolt and disappeared without a sound. They wanted me to know I was locked in. They didn't want anything else. They just wanted me to know. I still shoot abandoned buildings. I don't know how to stop. It's been part of my life for too long, but I don't go alone anymore, and I never go into a basement. And every time I walk into a building like that, every time I stand in a corridor and feel that particular silence of a place that has been empty for decades, I think about the footsteps, about how patient they were, about how long they might have been in that building before I arrived, and whether they were already there when I walked in. That's it for tonight. Subscribe if you want more. New story every week. And if you do urban exploration, always tell someone where you're going. Always check that the door opens from both sides.